Hey guys, last week I kind of introduced the idea of boundaries for you community based therapists and it being one of the biggest parts of treatment while you're being a community based therapist. And then I thought, well, I'm not really telling them a whole lot about what does that really mean? Like, how do you create a boundary? In grad school, we learn a lot of things and then get thrown into community based mental health. And there's expectations put on us where we don't feel ready or able to enforce a solid boundary in the therapeutic relationship. So, a lot of ways that private practice therapists set boundaries initially is through payment, is through, if you show up this late, then there's no session. How many times you cancel, like you could set up all kinds of different boundaries, which is a lot easier in private practice because you have people who they've searched you out. They're looking for help. They're looking to get better. And in the community realm, a lot of times you're getting referrals through a child's school. You're getting referrals because they have an open DCFS case. You're getting referrals because they have a voluntary court case right now, right? A voluntary case that hasn't gone to court yet. And they're saying pretty much like, if you don't do this, then we're going to take the kids away. So how do you set up a boundary with somebody who, one, if they cancel, and you close their case, they're going to be ecstatic. And they're going to be like, they closed my case for whatever reason. And they'll be able, they're just going to be like, well, they told me we didn't need it. Which isn't true a lot of the time. So I talked the last video about buy-in, right? You have to first identify who's the decision maker in the home, especially in our community-based programs. One that's a cultural piece of it, but it's also getting the buy-in, showing respect within the family to who they consider the decision maker. So once you get buy-in, it's about setting boundaries, right? Because there's ways you can make a relationship that violate boundaries, even in your personal life. It's really easy. I could set up a relationship where my boundaries get violated versus, telling somebody right up, straight up, like, if you text me and it's 7 o'clock at night, like, I'm not going to answer you because I have XYZ going on. So you set the boundary in the beginning, right? So nobody gets hurt, nobody is offended, everything's understood. So when the consequence happens, for example, if you text me at 8:30 and I don't answer, well, then the consequence that I don't answer happens, then that's already been talked about. And it's already been a boundary that we've talked about. So think about your boundaries in mental health, especially community-based work. A lot of boundaries that get crossed are late cancellations, right? I'm calling you last minute because there's a doctor's appointment. Chances are that doctor's appointment was made at the last doctor's appointment because that's how appointments get made for children, right? They may have just got the reminder, but they also got the reminder yesterday, right? Not 5 minutes before the appointment. So in those cases, you need, in the beginning, you need to set that boundary. Like, yes, although we're community based and although there's no payment, there is actually payment, right? You don't see the transaction, but there is payment that your agency is losing out on because the boundary is being violated. So you pretty much have to explain, look, like that last minute cancellation, I'm going to have to mark it down into the chart. After so many of these, it's really time to sit down and wonder, like, what is the problem? What is therapy scary? Is there something about me that's an issue? This is where all the difficult questions come up and where you as a therapist have to feel comfortable enough and ready enough to talk about difficult things like race, like religion, like people's stigma towards mental health, like what the community is thinking about them. Like, I can't believe I have this DCFS case. I love my children and people are telling me that I'm abusing them. Difficult things around culture are coming up. Immigration status come up. These are difficult conversations that you yourself have to be ready to have. That means you yourself have to be taking care of yourself. You need to know your issues so that you can address the issues that are coming up around boundaries with your clients. So late cancellations is one of them, right? Just completely blowing it off. Or maybe they're hopeful and they're like, yes, I'm going to go. And then boom, avoidance hits because they have a lot of trauma and they don't want to talk about it. It happens with everybody. It happens with us, like sometimes when we're burnt out and somebody starts talking about the sex abuse scandal that's happening online on TV, and it's just like la 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 la, right? Because we're not sorry, Art just fell. Because we're not in the space to be ready to hear it. We're avoiding it. And we have to be understanding of that in our clients. We have to know what we're doing. So when we see a client who's being avoidant, we should not be pushing them into the trauma, right? We need to be empathizing, validating, and normalizing their experience and the experience of avoidance. And remembering that avoidance oftentimes is not conscious, it's subconscious, and it's body-based. Like literally feeling ill before a session. Like, oh my God, my arm just hurts so bad. I need to go to the doctor. Like, I need urgent care 20 minutes before your therapy session. And sometimes it takes the professional calling out and saying, hey, you know what? Your life has been really difficult. And I totally get not wanting to talk about it. And here in this space, we don't have to talk about it. Everything's at your pace. There's a lot of things that you as a therapist can do. You could talk about talking about it, which I think is even too much for a lot of trauma survivors. A lot of it is talking about what's going on in their current life and relating it back to maybe their history, the rough relationships. Wow, you guys got in an argument again because of the dishes and it got way bigger than it should have. I wonder where that's coming from. Maybe you're feeling not heard because you're asking somebody to do something and they're not doing it, and it throws you back into being a kid and being a kid who's trying to say something, who's trying to get a need met, and they're being met with nothing, with apathy, with somebody who doesn't care. So everything that a client talks about and brings up and presents, one is trauma related, right? So being trauma informed is number one. And two is a symptom of what's going on. So avoidance, late cancellations, calling you at crazy hours of the night, which we're going to talk about. So when a client is calling you 24/7, like about nothing, I'm not talking about your high intensity clients who are calling because they're gonna kill themselves, right? Like that's a whole different story, and we need to be available as much as we can for that in community-based mental health. I'm talking about the people who are calling you at 10 o'clock at night because somebody's throwing a tantrum, right? Like a parent's calling you because little Joe is ripping up the house, right? Not an emergency. Like sometimes kids do this. Sometimes kids rip up the house. And we have to recognize it. Yes, it's a boundary violation. Absolutely. And it's something that you would immediately talk about when they called you. If you have accidentally picked up the phone, because first I would not even pick up the phone. But if you accidentally pick up the phone, it's something you immediately address. And you say, hey, I understand that things are hard right now. And you're feeling overwhelmed. But I unfortunately cannot help you right now. I can give you a call tomorrow at 9 when I come into the office and we can talk about what happened, right? You set your boundary, a hard boundary. If they continue to talk, you remind them, I'm going to go. I will give you a call at 9 o'clock in the morning. And another part of boundaries is that you have to take accountability and you actually have to call them. So whatever time you set, it has to be a time that you can actually call them. Like not in a meeting. If you're going to be in a meeting tomorrow at 9, don't tell them you're going to call them, right? Because now you're violating their boundary. So other things that a lot of people will tell you that people who are calling at all hours of the night, they're borderline. And that's something that we in the mental health community just like to label everybody as a borderline. And I challenge you in these situations to view every action of your clients as a reaction to their trauma. They've been triggered and they're reacting the best way that they know how. So that's a challenge for you guys when people are violating your boundaries to understand that people have violated their boundaries and they don't know what a healthy boundary is. And oftentimes we are the first people in their lives who can set a boundary without hurting them, right? And I'm not saying hurting them emotionally, because sometimes they're going to feel hurt that we're saying like, hey, I really care about you, but actually right now I'm not available. But we can talk about it tomorrow. Sometimes we'll throw some of your clients through a loop, especially if they do tend to have personality issues. But at the same time, boundaries. That's what helps those clients. Structure, routine. Another thing is people who have like changing session times. It's something to be addressed. Some people can't avoid it because of their work schedules, right? Like, hey, Mondays, sometimes I have off, and Tuesdays, sometimes I have off. You really want to get them into a consistent rhythm. Like, I meet with you Thursdays at 3:00 consistently. That also is another thing you as a therapist have to take accountability for. You cannot be canceling and rescheduling. You cannot. You need to plan in advance. Obviously, if you're sick, that's a different story, right? And obviously, if they're sick, it's a different story. However, you cannot move around your session times. And if you're moving them around, I 100% guarantee that your clients will be moving them around. So you also have to know that boundaries is modeling. So if I'm canceling, I'm going to expect that my clients will cancel as well. And we need to hold ourselves to as high or higher of a standard than we're holding our clients. So that's another piece of boundary. Again, a lot of boundary stuff is on you, right? Like I need to be comfortable enough to tell my client no. I need to be comfortable enough to say like, wow, this is definitely coming from avoidance and your trauma. I have to be unafraid of using my expertise, my knowledge, in order to identify the therapeutic process and what's happening when your boundaries are being violated. You have to identify it in order to process it and to eventually shift it, right? So that's my video today on boundaries. Again, I'm really excited. I really like talking about community mental health. I used to do it. I used to live it. I breathed it for a very long time, in the field as a provider and in the field as a supervisor. And it's not easy. And I just hope to give you a space where you can learn really valuable information, but at the same time, maybe hopefully eventually find connection with other community therapists who are going through the same thing, learning from them. How do they deal with it? And preventing burnout, because it is easy to get burned out. And I think that's what our next video is going to be about things you can do to help prevent your own burnout around self-care. But I'm not talking like self-care, like, go to the gym, because a lot of self-care can actually be numbing and avoidant. But talking about real, genuine self-care that's going to keep you emotionally healthy. So look forward to that, maybe next week sometime. And I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks. Bye.